Oh, Gone Girl. Am I going to say it right? Gillian Flynn? Or is it Gillian? Anyway, that book I really loved, and one thing I thought was amazing about what she did was that the twist, after the first twist, you become more interested, whereas there's some books that have a great twist, but I check out after the twist. I think I know the answer. I'm ready to go home. I'm standing up before the movie's over, that kind of thing. And I felt with Gone Girl, she really, just the twists made me get deeper into the story and more curious and more emotionally involved. So I was trying to do something like that. I worked with the ending in mind the whole time, but there was a lot of rearranging of the middle. You know, the book is in 5 acts, and there's a beginning section that stayed, close to its own self structurally, and an ending section, but the 3 middle sections, there was a lot of rearranging in order to make the story go the way it ultimately went. Another book that has a wonderful twist, that's a children's book that I really admire, is Rebecca Stead's book. Why am I going to forget that? I'm going to forget everything that's important when you reach me. This is, in that book, there are many little details that when you're reading it, you think, that's a little odd, or I wonder why people are acting that way, or like, why does she keep talking about this naked man? It doesn't seem important. And everything goes ka-ching, 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 when you really understand what's going on. And all of those micro details that didn't quite fit, that you thought you thought they were sloppy, or you thought they were like just a little oddball or a little overemphasized or something, it all turns out to be completely artful. And to me, that was a very satisfying book to read and to reread. And so, I did a lot of going back and trying to fine-tune those things so that they weren't big flags, that they were tiny suspicions, or, it's a lot of, micromanaging of that kind of textual suspense. In We Were Liars, there are 4 teenagers who have been completely enmeshed with each other every summer since they were quite young, and 3 of them are family, and one of them is an outsider to the family who's always been there in the summers on this island where they vacation. And to me, there's a bit of a fantasy element. I was an only child. I don't have clique is a mean word, but like a little, a posse of friends that I have always been with. I had those experiences only fleetingly, like in summer camp or a little bit in college, but then things would change the next year. So I think for me, it's that fantasy of that really, really intimate friendship, and then trying to unpack or break open that fantasy. I mean, it's a fantasy I genuinely have, of having these amazing best friends whose, love is just unconditional. But then, what could become of that? That's the thing that's interesting from a storyteller's perspective. I think a lot of my books have some kind of thematic material related to privilege in America, sort of privileged lifestyle, in particular privileged education, but also the other kind of institutions of waspy American privilege. And that comes from being a scholarship student at private schools for high school and for college, and having kind of one foot in that world and one foot out of it. I went to Vassar, I went to Lakeside here in Seattle, and I went to Columbia University after college. And so those institutions really shaped my thinking in lots of ways, but I was never completely a part of them. So I'm Gat, I guess, is really what I'm saying. He's this Indian teenager, Indian American boy, and he's been coming to this island through family connections, but he's not a member of this family. And I was really interested in his position, that one foot in and one foot out of this world, and kind of loving it and hating it, loving it and seeing it critically, and then being unable to see it critically, and then being able to see it only critically, and that vacillation of viewpoint. That's, I've had that experience. One great novel that really influenced We Were Liars is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. And that, like Liars, is a story of an outsider who is of a different racial background from an empowered white landowning family, and what happens when that outsider in Wuthering Heights Heathcliff, in We Were Liars Gat, comes into this family, is in some ways raised by this family, and in some way also ostracized by this family, and and all of the tensions that come out of that. And that's a novel that I've read many, many, many times, and it's got this reputation of being such a beautiful love story, and it's really a bleak and hateful, complicated, upsetting story of like people with these big, ugly passions and horrible behavior towards one another. It's a really raw book in a lot of ways, and I don't think We Were Liars is anywhere near that powerful, but I was pushing myself kind of in that Bronte direction. I don't, I'm a humor writer mainly, so I couldn't really go all the way there, but I wanted to like push myself to get that emotion out in a way that I don't think I had done in my previous books. One of the characters is a secondary character called Mirren, who has a very open heart, but also is a quick to judge person and a bit of a liar, as many other people in the book are. But she has a motto, which I think, don't quote me on this, but I think comes from J.M. Barrie, which is be a little kinder than you have to. And that is the one that I do carry around, because I can be quick to judge and not always the best person, the best version of myself. And that motto does help me to sort of get back in touch with who I really want to be. The other mottos are, a lot of them do come from famous people like Disraeli or whoever. But I try in the book to, kind of show both sides of adhering to these mottos, right? Don't take no for an answer can be a hugely empowering and awesome motto. And at the same time, it can be the motto of a tyrant. So I try to explore, what that motto might mean in more than one context. Always do what you're afraid to do, Katie's motto. I mean, I think the scariest thing I ever did was get married and have children, and I don't know that people usually think of those things in those terms, but I do think that's part of what We Were Liars is about. When you decide that you love somebody and that you are going to commit to them, you are opening up potential for a world of hurt. You are saying, you're making yourself vulnerable in the most fundamental human way, and this could ruin your life. It's much safer not to love somebody. It's much safer not to, have children. It's safer just to like stay in your little box where everything's the same every day and no one can hurt you. So I think that's kind of what I'm trying to talk about in this book a little bit, is that, when you step out of the safe place, where do you go and what are the consequences, and should you or should you not? The starting place for the physical elements of the novel was the migraines. The central character in We Were Liars has really debilitating migraine headaches, and there's a couple of people I love very much who have these, and I was interested in how chronic physical pain affects somebody's personality and their perspective on the world, and also how that pain, especially if it's not related to something life-threatening, as most migraines are not, although of course some are, would just take you out of your own life, your life story, so that you are, out and about, and then you have this migraine and you're gone for 3 days, then you're back in. And I was interested in that from a storytelling perspective. And so that was one of the starting places for the novel, and I wanted to explore that pain. So the happier physical sensations, the beautiful beach stuff and the romance, those were kind of all layered on top of the pain, if that makes sense. Anita Luce, she wrote Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and she was a big Hollywood screenwriter in an era when women were not very often big Hollywood screenwriters, and she wrote Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, which has been for me one of the most influential novels, and it is a light as air, farcical thing written in the most eccentric storytelling voice. And it's first person from the character that Marilyn Monroe plays in the movie. And it's so funny and so eccentric. And it asks a lot of you, like that highly, highly stylized narrator, like you see in Clockwork Orange, like you see in Huck Finn, but you don't see so often. And she just does it brilliantly. And I can't imagine anybody, over the age of 13 who wouldn't just fall in love with that book.